The Dark Mansion. It was a dark and stormy night when I received a letter from my distant relative, Mr. Edward Blackstone. He invited me to visit his mansion, which was located in the countryside. I had never met Mr. Blackstone before, but I was curious about the mansion and the family's history. When I arrived at the mansion, I was greeted by the butler, Mr. Jenkins. He was a tall, thin man with a pale face and sunken eyes. He led me to the living room where Mr. Blackstone was waiting for me. Mr. Blackstone was an old man with a kind face and a warm smile. He welcomed me to the mansion and offered me a cup of tea. As we sat down, I noticed that the room was filled with old furniture and dusty artifacts. There was a large portrait of a woman hanging on the wall, and I couldn't help but feel that she was watching me. As we sipped our tea, Mr. Blackstone began to tell me the story of the mansion. He explained that it had been built by his ancestors in the 18th century and had been passed down through the family for generations. However, he warned me that the mansion had a dark history and that many people had died within its walls. As the night wore on, I began to feel a chill run down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, and I kept looking over my shoulder. Mr. Blackstone seemed to sense my unease and leaned in close. "I'm afraid the mansion has a bit of a reputation," he whispered. "People say it's haunted by the ghost of my great-grandmother, Elizabeth. She died under mysterious circumstances, and many people believe that her spirit still roams the halls." I tried to laugh it off, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As I went to bed, I couldn't help but wonder if the stories were true. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of footsteps outside my room. I got out of bed and followed the sound to the attic. As I climbed the stairs, I felt a cold breeze blow past me, and I saw a figure standing in the shadows. It was the woman from the portrait, and she was staring straight at me. I tried to scream, but my voice was frozen in my throat. As I watched, she began to move towards me, her eyes fixed on mine. I turned and ran, but I could hear her footsteps behind me. I didn't stop until I was back in my room, locked and barricaded. I didn't come out until morning, and when I did, I found that Mr. Blackstone was gone. The butler, Mr. Jenkins, was waiting for me in the living room. He told me that Mr. Blackstone had left the mansion during the night, but he didn't know where he had gone. As I packed my bags to leave, I couldn't help but wonder if I had really seen the ghost of Elizabeth Blackstone. As I drove away from the mansion, I caught a glimpse of the portrait in the rearview mirror. The woman's eyes seemed to be following me, and I knew that I would never forget the terror I experienced in that dark and foreboding mansion. As I drove away from the mansion, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I kept looking in the rearview mirror, expecting to see the ghostly figure of Elizabeth Blackstone following me. When I arrived back home, I tried to put the experience out of my mind, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had left something behind. I began to feel a creeping sense of dread, as if something was watching me from the shadows. I tried to distract myself by throwing myself into my work, but I couldn't concentrate. I kept thinking about the mansion and the ghostly figure I had seen. It wasn't until I received a package in the mail that I realized the true extent of what I had experienced. Inside the package was a small antique music box. It was beautifully crafted with intricate patterns and designs. But it was the note that accompanied the music box that sent chills down my spine. It read, "You shouldn't have come here." I knew then that I had to get to the bottom of what was going on. I began to research the history of the mansion and the Blackstone family. What I found was shocking. The Blackstones had been involved in some dark and sinister activities, and it seemed that their ghosts still haunted the mansion. I knew then that I had to confront whatever evil forces were at work. I packed my bags and returned to the mansion, determined to uncover the truth. But as I approached the mansion, I realized that I was not alone. There was something waiting for me, something that did not want me to uncover the secrets of the Blackstone family. And then everything went black. As I stood there frozen in terror, I felt a presence behind me. I turned to see the ghostly figure of Elizabeth Blackstone standing in the doorway. Her eyes were black as coal, and they seemed to bore into my soul. I tried to scream, but my voice was frozen in my throat. Elizabeth began to move towards me, her eyes fixed on mine. I tried to run, but my legs were frozen in place. As she reached out to touch me, I felt a cold chill run down my spine, and then everything went black. When I came to, I was lying on the floor, my head throbbing with pain. I struggled to my feet, looking around for any sign of Elizabeth. But she was gone. I stumbled out of the mansion, determined to never return. As I looked back, I saw Elizabeth standing in the window, her eyes watching me. I knew then that I had to get as far away from the mansion as possible. I ran down the driveway, not stopping until I was back in my car. As I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that Elizabeth was still watching me. I looked in the rearview mirror, but she was gone. Or so I thought. As I drove, I began to feel a creeping sense of dread. I knew that I had to get rid of the music box to destroy it and break the curse. But as I reached for the music box, I felt a cold hand grasp my wrist. It was Elizabeth. And then everything went black. As I sat there frozen in terror, I felt Elizabeth's cold breath on my neck. I tried to struggle, but she was too strong. Suddenly, the car swerved off the road and crashed into a tree. I was knocked unconscious. And when I came to, I was lying in a hospital bed. The doctor told me that I had been in an accident, but I knew that it was more than that. Elizabeth had followed me, and she was still out there waiting for me. I knew that I had to get out of there to escape from Elizabeth's grasp. I checked myself out of the hospital and went into hiding. But no matter where I went, I could feel Elizabeth's presence. She was always watching me, waiting for me to let my guard down. And then one night I received a package in the mail. Inside, I found the music box and a note that read, "You'll never escape Tage KQ." I knew then that I was doomed. Elizabeth would never let me go, and I would be trapped in her world of terror forever. And then everything went black. The end.